The ocean had always called to Sarah Collins. Growing up in the sun-drenched, salty air of Key West, Florida, she was a child of the sea. Her earliest memories, woven with the rhythm of waves crashing against the coral-strewn shores. From her family's modest beachside cottage, she would slip out at dawn, barefoot and wide-eyed, to stand at the edge of the water, gazing at the horizon where the sky kissed the sea. The ocean wasn't just a place for Sarah, it was a living, breathing entity, a world of mystery and wonder that held secrets she yearned to uncover. By the time she was 8, a single moment changed her life forever. Her first visit to a marine park in Miami, where she saw an orca leap from the water, its black and white form glistening under the Florida sun. That image, powerful, graceful, almost otherworldly, ignited a spark in her heart that would burn for the rest of her life. Sarah's childhood was filled with the ocean's influence. Her parents, both teachers, nurtured her curiosity, though they sometimes worried about her obsession with the water. "You're going to turn into a fish one day," her mother would tease, watching Sarah pore over library books about marine life, her small hands tracing illustrations of orcas, dolphins, and whales. Her father, a history teacher with a love for storytelling, would regale her with tales of ancient mariners and the myths of sea creatures, fueling her imagination. But it was the orcas that captivated her most. She was drawn to their intelligence, their strength, their complex social bonds that seemed to mirror human families. In her young mind, they were not just animals but kindred spirits, beings she was destined to understand. By her teens, Sarah's passion had solidified into a clear ambition. She wasn't content to simply admire orcas from afar. She wanted to work with them, to learn their language, to bridge the gap between human and animal. Her bedroom became a shrine to her dream, walls plastered with posters of orcas leaping against sunset skies, shelves lined with books on cetacean behavior, and notebooks filled with sketches of their sleek forms. She volunteered at local aquariums, cleaning tanks and feeding fish, soaking up every bit of knowledge she could. Her determination was unshakable, even when peers mocked her for choosing marine biology over more practical careers. "I don't care about money," she'd say, her green eyes flashing with conviction. "I want to make a difference for them." Her talent and drive earned her a scholarship to the University of Miami, where she majored in marine biology. There, she thrived, her professors noting her ability to blend scientific rigor with an almost intuitive understanding of animals. She devoured courses on marine mammal behavior, acoustics, and conservation, spending late nights in the library, researching orca social structures and communication. Her senior thesis, a study on the emotional intelligence of cetaceans, won accolades and caught the attention of professionals in the field. But Sarah's ambitions went beyond academia. She wanted to be in the water, to feel the connection she'd dreamed of since childhood. After graduating with honors at 22, Sarah landed her dream job at Ocean Realm, a sprawling marine park in Miami, known for its dazzling orca shows and state-of-the-art facilities. Nestled along the city's vibrant coastline, the park was a beacon for tourists, drawing thousands each year to witness the spectacle of Waves of Wonder, a show that combined acrobatics, music, and the raw power of orcas. At 24, Sarah was one of the youngest trainers hired, a testament to her skill and charisma. Her colleagues quickly recognized her gift, an uncanny ability to read animals, to anticipate their moods, and to command their trust. She moved through the water with a confidence that belied her age, her auburn hair catching the sunlight as she worked, her smile radiating a joy that was infectious. Sarah's rise at Ocean Realm was meteoric. Within a year, she was leading training sessions, her natural talent earning her the respect of even the most seasoned trainers. She approached her work with a blend of discipline and empathy, treating the animals not as performers but as partners. Her philosophy was simple. "They're not here to entertain us, they're here to teach us. We just have to listen." This mindset set her apart in an industry often driven by spectacle over substance, and it endeared her to the animals we worked with, particularly one orca who would come to define her career. Her name was Tora, a 90-foot, 8,000-pound female orca captured off the coast of Norway in 1994. Tora was a marvel, her sleek body a study in power and grace, her black dorsal fin slicing through the water like a blade. She was the undisputed star of Ocean Realm, the centerpiece of every Waves of Wonder performance. To the audience, Tora was a spectacle, leaping high above the pool, splashing the front rows with her massive tail, and carrying trainers on her back in choreographed routines that seemed almost magical. But to Sarah, Tora was something more, a being with a personality, a history, a soul. From their first interaction, Sarah felt a connection that went beyond training. It was as if Tora understood her, as if they shared a language no one else could hear. Their bond grew over years of working together. Sarah spent hours by Tora's tank, observing her every movement, noting the way her eyes followed her, the subtle flicks of her tail, the low vocalizations that seemed to carry meaning only Sarah could decipher. She learned Tora's quirks, how she loved to play with a particular rubber ball, how she would sometimes linger at the surface to watch the clouds, how her mood could shift with the weather. Sarah adapted her training to Tora's rhythms, designing routines that played to the orca's strengths while keeping her engaged. Their performances were breathtaking, a seamless dance of human and animal that left audiences in awe. During one show, as Tora lifted Sarah high above the water, spinning in perfect sync, a colleague whispered, "They're like one creature out there, it's unreal." Sarah's colleagues marveled at their chemistry. "Sarah and Tora have something special," said Mark, a veteran trainer with a grizzled beard and a decade of experience. "I've never seen an orca respond to anyone like that. It's like Sarah can read her mind." Another trainer, Lisa, put it more poetically. "They're like sisters from different worlds." Sarah knows Tora better than she knows herself. Offstage, Sarah's devotion to Tora was even more evident. She arrived early each morning, checking on Tora before anyone else, ensuring her tank was clean, her food fresh, her mood stable. She talked to Tora, not in the commanding tones of a trainer, but in the soft, reassuring voice of a friend. "You're my girl," she'd whisper, resting her hand on the glass of the tank. Tora's massive form gliding past, but beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect partnership, there were signs small, easily dismissed that hinted at trouble. Tora, for all her grace, had a history of unpredictable behavior. Trainers had noted moments when she ignored cues, snapping at the water, or delivering sharp tail slaps that sent waves crashing over the pool's edge. These incidents were minor, often attributed to the natural temperament of a wild animal. After all, orcas were apex predators, not domesticated pets, and a certain level of unpredictability was expected. Sarah, with her deep understanding of Tora, saw these moments as communication, not aggression. She believed she could anticipate Tora's moods, could guide her through any restlessness with patience and trust. Yet, not everyone shared her optimism. Mark, the veteran trainer, had seen too many orcas over the years to be fully convinced. "Tora's got a spark in her," he told Sarah one evening, as they cleaned the training area. "She's amazing, but she's still wild. You can't forget that." Sarah nodded, her smile unwavering. "I know her, Mark. She's not dangerous. She's just Tora." Her confidence was both her strength and her blind spot, a belief in their bond that left little room for doubt. She saw Tora not as a captive animal but as a partner, a friend who chose to work with her. It was a perspective that fueled their extraordinary connection but also masked the deeper tensions simmering beneath the surface. Tora's life at Ocean Realm was a stark contrast to her origins. Born in the cold, deep waters of the North Atlantic, she had once roamed with her pod, a tight-knit family of orcas navigating the open ocean. Her capture in 1994 was a traumatic event, a violent separation from her kin that left her in a world of concrete and glass. At Ocean Realm, her natural behaviors were reshaped to fit the demands of the show. She was taught to leap on command, to splash the audience, to perform tricks that delighted crowds, but bore little resemblance to her life in the wild. Her tank, though large by industry standards, was a fraction of the vast ocean she once called home. Her diet of frozen fish lacked the variety of her natural prey, and her companions, other captive orcas, were strangers, not family. Sarah was aware of Tora's history, but she believed her care could mitigate the effects of captivity. She advocated for better conditions, pushing for enrichment activities like new toys and varied training routines. She spent hours researching orca behavior, hoping to give Tora a semblance of the freedom she'd lost. But the reality of captivity was inescapable. The tank's walls confined Tora's world, limiting her movements and stifling her instincts. Trainers like Mark noticed subtle signs of stress moments when Tora would linger at the bottom of the tank, her body still, or emit low, rumbling vocalizations that hinted at frustration. These were documented in internal reports, but rarely discussed openly. Ocean Realm's parent company, Coastal Entertainment, had a vested interest in maintaining the illusion of happy, healthy animals. The Orca shows were the park's biggest draw, generating millions in revenue, and any hint of distress could invite scrutiny from animal rights groups. Sarah, caught up in her love for Tora, didn't see the full extent of the strain. She believed their bond was enough to overcome the challenges of captivity, that her care could fill the void left by Tora's lost freedom. She spent her days dreaming of ways to improve Tora's life, sketching plans for larger tanks and sanctuary programs that could one day offer orcas a more natural environment. But these were distant dreams, and the reality of Ocean Realm was far more immediate. The pressure to perform, to deliver flawless shows, was relentless, and Sarah, like all trainers, was caught in its grip. As the years passed, Sarah and Tora's partnership grew stronger, their performances more polished, their bond deeper. To the outside world, they were the perfect team, a symbol of harmony between human and animal. But beneath the surface, there were cracks, moments of unease that went unnoticed or unheeded. Tora's occasional lapses, her subtle signs of agitation, were dismissed as quirks, not warnings. Sarah's faith in their connection blinded her to the possibility that Tora, despite their bond, was still a wild creature, her instincts shaped by a world far beyond the confines of a tank. On a warm June morning, as Sarah prepared for another day at Ocean Realm, she stood by Tora's tank, watching the Orca glide through the water. The sun was rising over Miami, casting golden light across the pool, and Sarah felt a familiar surge of gratitude. "We're doing something special, aren't we?" she murmured, her hand pressed against the glass. Tora's eye met hers, and for a moment, the world felt right. But in the depths of that gaze, there was something Sarah couldn't quite read, a flicker of restlessness, a shadow of something wild and untamed. It was a sign she didn't yet understand, a harbinger of the tragedy that would soon unfold, shattering the trust she held so dear. Tora's world had not always been one of concrete and glass. Born in the icy, fathomless waters of the North Atlantic, off the rugged coast of Norway, she entered life as a member of a tight-knit pod of orcas, a family bound by blood and song. In those early years, she swam freely, her sleek 19-foot body slicing through the waves, her powerful tail propelling her across vast distances. She hunted with her kin, diving deep to chase herring, their synchronized movements a testament to the intricate social bonds that defined orca life. Her pod's vocalizations, clicks, whistles, and haunting calls wove a tapestry of communication, a language that carried stories, warnings, and love across the sea. Tora was a young orca then, vibrant and curious, her life a dance of freedom under the endless sky. That life ended abruptly in 1994. A team of marine park contractors, armed with nets and boats, descended on her pod in a chaotic capture operation. The orcas scattered, their calls turning frantic as the nets closed in. Tora, barely 5 years old, was ensnared, her powerful body thrashing against the ropes. She was separated from her mother, her siblings, her world, and hauled onto a ship, bound for Ocean Realm in Miami, Florida. The trauma of that day lingered in her, a wound that no amount of training could erase. Her new home was a 60-foot deep tank, its walls smooth and unyielding, its water chlorinated and still. The ocean's vastness was gone, replaced by a confined space that echoed with the hum of filtration systems and the distant cheers of crowds. At Ocean Realm, Tora was transformed. Her natural behaviors, hunting, diving, roaming, were reshaped to fit the demands of the Waves of Wonder show. Trainers taught her to leap on command, to splash the audience with her massive tail, to carry humans on her rostrum in choreographed routines that dazzled spectators. She learned quickly, her intelligence a double-edged sword that made her both a star performer and acutely aware of her constraints. Her diet, once varied with live fish and squid, became a monotonous supply of frozen herring and mackerel, doled out as rewards for tricks. Her pod was replaced by other captive orcas, strangers with whom she shared no history, their interactions often tense or indifferent. The tank, though spacious by industry standards, was a prison compared to the ocean, limiting her movements and stifling her instincts. Sarah Collins, who joined Ocean Realm years later, knew Tora's story, or at least the sanitized version provided in the park's training manuals. The details of her capture were glossed over, framed as a rescue of an orca who would have struggled in the wild. Sarah, with her deep love for orcas, saw Tora's past as a call to action. She believed she could give Tora a life of purpose, filling the void left by her lost freedom with care, stimulation, and connection. From their first meeting, Sarah felt a spark, a sense that Tora understood her in a way that transcended species. She dedicated herself to learning everything about the orca, spending hours studying her behavior, noting every nuance of her movements, every shift in her mood. Sarah's approach to training was different from many of her colleagues, where some relied on rigid commands and rewards. Sarah treated Tora as a partner, adapting her methods to the orca's rhythms. She designed routines that played to Tora's strengths, incorporating playful elements like tossing balls or chasing water jets to keep her engaged. She spoke to Tora in a soft, melodic voice, believing the orca could sense her intentions. "You're more than a performer," she'd whisper during quiet moments by the tank. "You're my friend." Her colleagues admired her empathy, but some worried it bordered on naivety. "Sarah's too close to Tora," one trainer, Lisa, confided to another. "She thinks she knows her, but orcas aren't pets. They're wild, no matter how long they've been here." Tora's life in captivity was a study in contrasts. To the audience, she was a marvel, her performances a blend of power and grace that left them spellbound. She leaped 20 feet into the air, her body twisting in perfect arcs, sending waves crashing over the front rows. She carried Sarah on her back, their movements synchronized in a dance that seemed almost supernatural. But behind the curtain, Tora's existence was marked by monotony and stress. Her days were a cycle of training sessions, shows, and long hours in the tank, swimming endless circles with nowhere to go. Her intelligence, which made her a star, also made her acutely aware of her confinement. Trainers noticed subtle signs of distress moments when Tora would linger at the bottom of the tank, her massive body still, or emit sharp, guttural vocalizations that hinted at frustration. These behaviors were documented in ocean realms, internal logs, but rarely discussed openly. The park's parent company, Coastal Entertainment, was a multi-million-dollar enterprise, and the orca shows were its lifeblood. Any suggestion of animal distress could damage the brand, scare away visitors, and invite scrutiny from animal rights groups like the Marine Freedom Alliance, which had long criticized the park's practices. So, incidents were minimized, explained, away as quirks of a wild animal. A tail slap was playful, a refusal to eat was picky, a sudden lunge was just Tora being Tora. The trainers, caught between their love for the animals and the demands of their employer, often stayed silent, their concerns whispered in private. Sarah, with her boundless optimism, saw Tora's behaviors through a different lens. She interpreted the orca's occasional lapses, ignoring a cue, snapping at the water as communication, not aggression. She believed Tora was expressing her needs, and it was her job to listen. During one training session, Tora refused to perform a spin, instead circling the tank with an intensity that made Sarah pause. "You're feeling restless, aren't you?" she murmured, tossing a ball into the water to shift the orca's focus. Tora responded, chasing the ball with a burst of energy, and Sarah smiled, convinced she'd bridged the gap. But other trainers weren't so sure. Mark, the grizzled veteran with a decade at the park, watched the exchange with a furrowed brow. "She's got an edge, Sarah," he said later. "You're good with her, but don't let your guard down." Mark's warning wasn't baseless. Tora's history included a string of minor incidents that had been quietly swept under the rug. In 2001, she'd lunged at a trainer during a session, missing by inches. In 2008, she'd slapped the water with her tail during a show, drenching a colleague who'd misread her cue. These moments were noted in reports but dismissed as isolated, attributed to the unpredictability of a wild animal. Coastal Entertainment's management had a clear directive: keep the shows running, keep the crowds happy, keep the revenue flowing. Safety protocols were in place. Trainers were trained to watch for signs of agitation, to maintain distance during risky behaviors, but they were often secondary to the spectacle. The pressure to deliver flawless performances was immense, and trainers like Sarah were caught in its grip. Sarah, though, believed her bond with Tora could overcome any challenge. She spent her evenings researching orca behavior, reading studies on their emotional intelligence and social needs. She dreamed of a future where orcas like Tora could live in sanctuaries, vast coastal enclosures that mimicked the ocean's freedom. She sketched plans for such a place, sharing them with Lisa over coffee in the trainer's break room. "Imagine Tora swimming in a bay, with real waves, real fish," she said, her eyes alight. Lisa nodded, but her expression was skeptical. "Sounds amazing, but coastal won't let go of their cash cow. Tora's worth millions to them." Sarah's smile faltered, but she pushed the thought aside. "One day," she said, "one day we'll make it happen." The reality of Ocean Realm was far less idealistic. The park's culture was one of high stakes and higher expectations. Trainers were expected to push the animals to perform, to create shows that outdid the competition. Ocean Realm's rivals in Orlando and San Diego were constantly upping the ante, and coastal entertainment demanded innovation. Sarah, as one of the park's top trainers, felt the weight of this pressure. She was tasked with designing new routines for Tora, stunts that would wow audiences and keep ticket sales soaring. The rostrum lift, where Tora raised Sarah high above the water, was her creation, a move that showcased their trust and drew gasps from the crowd. But each new trick required hours of training, pushing Tora's limits and testing her patience. The trainers' lives were demanding. 2 long hours, physical exhaustion, and the emotional toll of working with intelligent, unpredictable animals took their toll. Sarah thrived on the challenge, but even she felt the strain. She lived in a small apartment near the park, her evenings spent reviewing training footage or planning the next day's sessions. Her social life was limited. Most of her friends were colleagues, and her family in Key West saw her only on rare visits. Her world revolved around Tora and Ocean Realm, a fact that both fulfilled and isolated her. "You're married to that Orca," Mark teased one day, and Sarah laughed. But there was truth in his words. As the summer of her 9th year at Ocean Realm approached, Sarah sensed a shift in Tora. The Orca's moods were less predictable, her responses slower. During one session, Tora ignored a cue to leap, instead diving to the bottom of the tank and staying there, her body motionless. Sarah waited, her heart pounding, until Tora surfaced with a sharp exhale. Her eyes locked on Sarah's. "What's going on, girl?" Sarah asked, her voice steady but tinged with unease. She tossed a fish into the water, and Tora took it, but her movements lacked their usual enthusiasm. Sarah noted the incident in her log, but dismissed it as a bad day. "She's just tired," she told Lisa later. "We've been pushing her hard." But the signs continued. Tora's tail slaps grew more frequent, her vocalizations sharper. During a show, she deviated from the routine, circling the pool instead of approaching Sarah. For a cue, the audience didn't notice, but Sarah felt the disconnect, a subtle fracture in their rhythm. She played it off, splashing water to keep the crowd engaged, but her mind raced. Was Tora stressed, bored, something else? She doubled her efforts, spending even more time with the Orca, trying to decode her behavior. She consulted with Mark, who shrugged. "Orcas are like that sometimes. You can't read their minds, no matter how much you try." The truth was more troubling. Tora's behaviors were not random. They were the symptoms of a life in captivity, a life that no amount of care could fully compensate for. Her intelligence, her emotional depth, made her acutely aware of her confinement. The tank's walls, the repetitive routines, the absence of her paddle, these wore on her, eroding her spirit. Sarah's love, her dedication, could soften the edges, but they couldn't erase the fundamental truth. Tora was a wild creature in an unnatural world, and the strain was beginning to show. Ocean Realm's management, meanwhile, remained focused on profit. The park was preparing for a major summer season, with new marketing campaigns touting Tora as Miami's Ocean Queen. Sarah was tasked with creating a grand finale for the Waves of Wonder show, a stunt that would cement Tora's status as a star. She designed a sequence involving multiple leaps and a dramatic rostrum lift, a move that required perfect timing and trust. Tora performed it flawlessly in rehearsals, but Sarah noticed a hesitation in her eyes, a fleeting moment of resistance. She pushed the thought aside, convincing herself it was her imagination. "We're ready," she told her team, her voice firm. "Tora's got this." As the June sun climbed higher over Miami, the stage was set for another show, another performance, another day in the life of Sarah and Tora. The crowds would come, the music would play, and the Orca would leap. Her power, a spectacle for all to see. But beneath the surface, the hidden strains were growing, a pressure building toward a breaking point that no one, not Sarah, not Tora, not Ocean Realm, could foresee. The bond they shared, so strong, so celebrated, was about to face its greatest test, one that would change everything. The June sun blazed over Miami, its relentless heat shimmering off the asphalt and turning Ocean Realm into a vibrant hive of excitement. The marine park was alive with the sounds of summer children's laughter, the hum of crowds, the distant call of seagulls circling above the turquoise waters of Biscayne Bay. Families streamed through the gates, clutching tickets and sunscreen, their faces alight with anticipation for the day's main event, the Waves of Wonder show, starring Tora, the orca billed as Miami's ocean queen. The arena, a sprawling amphitheater encircling a 60-foot-deep pool, was packed to capacity, with over 3,000 spectators filling the stands, their chatter blending with the upbeat pop music pulsing through the speakers. The water in the pool sparkled, under the midday light, a deceptive mirror of calm that belied the storm about to erupt. Sarah Collins stood backstage, her heart steady despite the frenetic energy around her. At 33, she was at the peak of her career, a trainer whose name was synonymous with Tora's star power. Her auburn hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, her wetsuit snug against her athletic frame, her green eyes focused as she reviewed the show's routine in her mind. Today's performance was special, featuring a new finale Sarah had designed, a series of synchronized leaps culminating in the rostrum lift, where Tora would raise her high above the water in a breathtaking display of trust and strength. The move had been perfected in rehearsals, each step choreographed to showcase their bond. Sarah felt a quiet confidence as she adjusted her earpiece, listening to the stage manager's cues. "We're ready," she murmured to herself, a smile tugging at her lips. "Tora and I are ready." Her colleagues bustled around her, checking equipment and exchanging quick words of encouragement. Mark, the veteran trainer with a grizzled beard, clapped her on the shoulder. "Knock him dead, Sarah," he said, his voice gruff but warm. Lisa, another trainer, gave her a thumbs up from across the platform, her expression a mix of excitement and nerves. The team was tight-knit, bound by their shared love for the animals and the adrenaline of the shows. But Sarah was the star of this moment. Her connection with Tora was the heart of Waves of Wonder, a partnership that had become legendary at Ocean Realm. As the music swelled, signaling the start of the show, Sarah took her place at the edge of the pool, her bare feet gripping the smooth concrete. The crowd roared, their applause washing over her like a wave. She raised her arms, signaling the opening sequence, and the lights dimmed, casting dramatic beams across the water. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ocean Realm's Waves of Wonder, where humans and orcas dance together in harmony. Give it up for our star trainer, Sarah Collins, and the incredible Tora." The cheers grew louder, and Sarah's smile widened, her heart swelling with pride. This was her world, her purpose, her dream come true. Tora emerged from the underwater gate, her 19-foot body gliding into the pool with a grace that silenced the crowd for a moment. Her black and white form shimmered under the surface, her dorsal fin cutting through the water like a blade. She surfaced with a powerful exhale, sending a plume of mist into the air, and the audience erupted in applause. Sarah gave the first cue, a sharp hand signal, and Tora responded, launching into a series of leaps that sent waves crashing over the pool's edge. The crowd gasped and cheered, children pointing excitedly as Tora's massive body twisted in mid-air. Her strength, a spectacle of nature's raw power. The routine unfolded flawlessly at first. Sarah moved with Tora, their movements synchronized like a dance. She dove into the water, swimming alongside the orca, her strokes matching Tora's rhythm. They executed a spin, Tora's tail sending a cascade of water into the stands, eliciting squeals of delight. Sarah surfaced, her face glowing with exhilaration, and gave the next cue, signaling Tora to approach for a playful splash. The orca complied, her tail slapping the water with precision, drenching the front rows. The crowd loved it, their laughter echoing through the arena. But, as the show progressed, Sarah sensed a subtle shift. Tora's responses were slower, her movements less fluid. During a routine circle, she lingered underwater, her massive form hovering near the bottom of the tank. Sarah, standing at the pool's edge, waited, her hand poised for the next signal. The crowd didn't notice, distracted by the music and lights, but Sarah felt a prickle of unease. "Come on, girl," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the speakers. Tora surfaced at last, her eyes meeting Sarah's, but there was something in that gaze, something distant, unreadable. Sarah pushed the thought aside, attributing it to the heat or the intensity of the show. "She's just off today," she told herself, forcing a smile as she gave the next cue. The routine continued, but the tension grew. Tora's leaps were powerful, but lacked their usual precision, her splashes more forceful than playful. Sarah, ever the professional, adapted, keeping the show on track with her confident presence. She dove into the water again, swimming close to Tora, their bodies moving in tandem. The crowd cheered, unaware of the subtle disconnect. Sarah surfaced, signaling for the next sequence, a series of synchronized spins leading into the rostrum. Lift, the show's grand finale. This was their moment, the stunt that defined their partnership, and Sarah felt a surge of determination. "We've got this," she murmured, her eyes locked on Tora's. But as she extended her arm for the cue, Tora deviated from the routine. Instead of approaching smoothly, she made a sudden move, a playful dunk, pushing Sarah into the water with her snout. It was a gesture Tora had done before, a light-hearted nudge that Sarah usually laughed off. She surfaced, splashing water to engage the crowd, her smile masking the flicker of concern in her chest. "Easy, girl," she said softly, swimming back to the edge. She gave the signal again, expecting Tora to fall back into rhythm, but the orca's behavior grew erratic. Tora circled the pool, her movements sharper, more agitated, her tail flicking with an intensity that sent ripples across the surface. Sarah's heart quickened, but she maintained her composure, years of training kicking in. She signaled for Tora to approach, her hands steady despite the growing unease. The crowd, still thinking it was part of the show, clapped rhythmically, their excitement fueling the atmosphere. Tora responded at last, swimming toward Sarah, but her approach was different, faster, less controlled. Sarah felt it, a shift in the air, a moment where the world seemed to hold its breath. She extended her arm, ready for the rostrum lift, trusting Tora to follow through as she always had. Then it happened. In a flash, Tora's massive jaws clamped down on Sarah's left arm, the force sending a shockwave of pain through her body. The orca's teeth sank deep, her grip unyielding, and Sarah's world exploded into chaos. She gasped, her mind reeling, unable to process the betrayal. Was this a mistake, a miscommunication? The crowd's cheers faltered, replaced by murmurs of confusion, but to them, it still looked like part of the performance, a dramatic stunt gone slightly awry. Sarah, however, knew the truth. This was no act. Tora, her partner, her friend, had become something else entirely. She fought to break free, pulling with all her strength, her right arm flailing against the water. The pain was searing, a white-hot agony that threatened to overwhelm her, but adrenaline kept her moving. "Tora, let go," she cried, her voice drowned out by the splashing water. The orca's grip tightened, and Sarah was dragged beneath. The surface, the world above vanishing in a blur of bubbles and darkness. Her lungs burned, her body twisting as she tried to wrench her arm free. But Tora's power was overwhelming, her 8,000-pound frame of force Sarah couldn't match. For a fleeting moment, she broke the surface, gasping for air, her face pale with shock, her eyes locked with Tora's, searching for the connection they had shared, the trust she had believed in. But Tora's gaze was wild, her black eyes unreadable, devoid of the warmth Sarah had known. The orca pulled her under again, the water closing over her like a shroud. Sarah's mind raced, memories flashing through her childhood by the sea, her dreams of swimming with orcas, the countless hours with Tora, building a bond she thought was unbreakable. What had gone wrong? How had it come to this? The struggle continued, relentless and brutal. Sarah surfaced again, her strength fading, her arm numb from the crushing pressure of Tora's jaws. The crowd's murmurs turned to screams as the reality dawned. Something was terribly wrong. Children clung to their parents, faces frozen in fear, while adults stood, pointing at the churning water. On the platform, Mark and Lisa sprang into action, their training overriding their shock. "Get the nets," Mark shouted, his voice hoarse. Lisa slammed the alarm, a piercing wail cutting through the music. Staff rushed to the pool's edge, deploying emergency nets and banging metal poles against the water, desperate to distract Tora. But Tora ignored them, her focus solely on Sarah. The orca thrashed, her tail sending waves crashing over the platform, her movements wild and uncontrolled. Sarah fought with everything she had, her body battered by the force of the water, her lungs screaming for oxygen. She surfaced once more, her face contorted in pain, her eyes wide with terror. "Help!" she gasped, her voice barely audible before Tora yanked her under again. The water around them was a maelstrom, frothing with the violence of their struggle. The blue pool stained with streaks of red dot in those final moments. Sarah's thoughts turned to the ocean, not the confined tank where she fought for her life, but the vast, wild sea she had loved since childhood. She saw the waves of Key West, the horizon stretching endlessly before her, the orcas leaping in freedom. She thought of Tora, not as the predator she had become, but as the creature she had been born to be, a wild spirit, trapped in a world that could never contain her. The darkness closed in, her strength ebbing, and Sarah's last breath was a silent plea, not for herself, but for Tora. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." The struggle ended as abruptly as it began. Tora released her grip, her jaws opening as if snapping out of a trance. Sarah's body floated to the surface, limp and motionless, her wetsuit torn, her arm mangled. Mark and Lisa, tears streaming down their faces, dove into the pool, pulling her to the edge with trembling hands. They laid her on the concrete, there, movements frantic as they checked for a pulse. The crowd was in chaos, some screaming, others frozen in disbelief, parents shielding their children's eyes. The music had stopped, the arena filled with the wail of the alarm and the shouts of staff. Paramedics rushed to the scene, pushing through the stunned trainers to reach Sarah. They knelt beside her, their hands moving with practiced precision. Chest compressions, rescue breaths, the hum of a defibrillator charging. "Come on, Sarah," one medic muttered, his voice tight with urgency. But her body remained still, her face pale, her eyes closed. The trainers stood back, their faces ashen, watching as the medics worked, their efforts growing more desperate with each passing second. Mark clutched Lisa's arm, his knuckles white, while Lisa covered her mouth. Stifling a sob, the medics continued for what felt like an eternity, but the truth was clear to all who watched. Sarah Collins, the trainer who had lived for the sea, who had loved Tora with every fiber of her being, was gone. The arena, once a place of joy and wonder, was now a stage for tragedy, its bright lights casting harsh shadows over the scene. Tora, still in the pool, swam in slow circles, her movements subdued, as if sensing the weight of what had happened. The crowd was ushered out, their voices hushed, their faces etched with shock. The ocean realm, in an instant, had changed forever. The air at Ocean Realm was heavy with silence in the hours following Sarah Collins' death. The vibrant marine park, once a beacon of joy and spectacle along Miami's sunlit coast, felt like a hollow shell. The Waves of Wonder Arena, where just hours before thousands had cheered for Sarah and Tora, was now cordoned off, its blue pool still rippling faintly under the harsh glare of emergency lights. Staff moved in a daze, their faces pale, their voices muted as they grappled with the unthinkable. The paramedics had left, their equipment packed away, their efforts to revive Sarah futile. Her body, covered with a sheet, had been taken to the coroner's office, leaving behind a void that seemed to swallow the park whole. Mark, the veteran trainer, stood by the pool's edge, staring at the water where Tora swam in slow, aimless circles. His grizzled beard was damp with tears, his hands clenched into fists. Lisa, her eyes red and swollen, sat on a nearby bench, clutching a water bottle she hadn't touched. Other trainers gathered in small groups, whispering or standing in stunned silence, unable to process the loss of their colleague, their friend. Sarah had been the heart of their team, her passion for the animals a light that had guided them all. Now, that light was gone, extinguished in a moment of violence that none of them could have foreseen. The crowd had been evacuated from the arena, their excitement replaced by shock and confusion. Parents had shielded their children's eyes, hurrying them toward the exits as security ushered them out. Social media was already ablaze with grainy videos and frantic posts, eyewitness accounts spreading like wildfire. Trainer attacked by orca at Ocean Realm, one headline read, accompanied by a blurry image of the churning water. The park's management, led by Coastal Entertainment's regional director, issued a brief statement. "We are devastated by the tragic incident at Ocean Realm. Our thoughts are with the trainer's family and our staff. We are cooperating fully with authorities and have suspended all shows pending investigation." The words were clinical, inadequate, a bandage on a wound too deep to heal. Sarah's family in Key West was notified by a park official, a call that shattered their world. Her parents, both retired teachers, drove through the night to Miami, their hearts heavy with grief. Her younger brother, a college student, joined them, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a quiet, hollow stare. They arrived at Ocean Realm the next morning, met by a somber group of trainers who shared stories of Sarah's brilliance, her laughter, her unshakable love for the sea. She was born for this, her mother said through tears, clutching a photo of Sarah as a child. Standing on a beach, with a toy orca in her hand, the ocean was her home. A makeshift memorial sprang up outside the park's gates, a growing pile of flowers, candles, and handwritten notes. For Sarah, who loved the orcas, one read, scrawled in a child's hand, "Rest in the sea you loved." Visitors, locals, and even strangers left tributes, their messages a mix of sorrow and anger. "This shouldn't have happened," another note read. "Free the orcas." The sentiment was echoed online, where animal rights activists seized on the tragedy. There, posts calling for an end to orca captivity gaining thousands of shares. The Marine Freedom Alliance, a vocal critic of Ocean Realm, released a statement. Sarah Collins' death is a heartbreaking reminder of the cost of keeping orcas in tanks. These are wild animals, not performers. It's time to end this cruelty. Investigations began almost immediately. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration (OSHA) dispatched a team to Ocean Realm. Their focus on workplace safety and trainer protocols. Wildlife protection agencies, including the National Marine Fisheries Service, launched parallel inquiries examining Tora's history and the park's animal care practices. The coroner's report, released days later, confirmed the devastating truth. Sarah had died from blunt force trauma and drowning. Tora's powerful jaws had crushed her left arm, causing massive internal injuries, and repeated submersion had deprived her of oxygen. The report was clinical, but its findings were damning, raising questions about how such a tragedy could have occurred. The investigations uncovered a troubling pattern. Tora's behavioral records, buried in Ocean Realm's internal files, documented a history of minor incidents, moments of aggression, disobedience, and frustration that had been downplayed or ignored. In 2001, she had lunged at a trainer, stopping short of contact. In 2008, she had slapped the water during a show, nearly knocking a colleague off the platform. Other entries noted her refusal to eat, her sharp vocalizations, her tendency to circle the tank obsessively. These were not isolated events but signs of a deeper issue, a wild creature struggling under the weight of captivity. Yet, Coastal Entertainment's management had dismissed them, prioritizing profit over precaution. "She's an orca," one executive had written in a memo. "Some unpredictability is expected." Trainers, too, had whispered about Tora's volatility, but their concerns were rarely escalated. The park's culture discouraged dissent, with trainers expected to maintain the illusion of harmony. Sarah, with her deep bond with Tora, had been the least likely to voice alarm, her faith in the orca blinding her to the risks. She thought she could read Tora, Mark told investigators, his voice heavy with regret. "We all did, to some extent, but we should have pushed harder. We should have seen it coming." Lisa, in her statement, was more direct. The company knew about Tora's history, they just didn't want to hear it. Shows had to go on, no matter what. The public response was swift and fierce. Protests erupted outside Ocean Realm, with activists holding signs reading "Free Tora" and "End Orca Slavery." News outlets ran exposés on the marine park industry, interviewing former trainers who spoke of grueling schedules, inadequate safety measures, and the emotional toll of working with stressed animals. Documentaries like Blackfish, which had sparked debate years earlier, saw a resurgence, their message amplified by Sarah's death. Social media hashtags #JusticeForSarah, #FreeTheOrcas- trended globally, with users sharing stories of orca intelligence, their complex social lives, and the cruelty of confinement. "Orcas belong in the ocean, not tanks," one viral post read, accompanied by an image of a wild orca leaping against a sunset sky. Coastal Entertainment faced mounting pressure. Stock prices dipped, sponsors pulled funding, and ticket sales plummeted. The company announced a temporary closure of Ocean Realm, citing respect for the ongoing investigation. But the move felt like a retreat. Other marine parks in Orlando and San Diego issued statements distancing themselves from ocean realm, emphasizing their own safety protocols, but the industry as a whole was under siege. Lawmakers in Florida and California proposed bills to phase out orca captivity, citing Sarah's death as a catalyst. Public opinion, once divided, shifted decisively against the practice, with polls showing overwhelming support for ending orca shows. For Tora, life continued in the same concrete tank, her world unchanged despite the tragedy. She swam in slow, repetitive circles, her once vibrant spirit dulled by the confines of her environment. Trainers were barred from entering the water with her, a precaution that left her isolated, her only interactions limited to feeding sessions through a barrier. To those who saw her, she was a shadow of the wild creature she had been born to be, her black eyes reflecting a quiet resignation. "She's not the same," Lisa said, watching Tora one evening. "It's like she knows what she did, but she doesn't understand why." Mark shook his head. "She's not a monster, she's just lost." Sarah's memorial was held a week later at a beach near Ocean Realm, a place she had loved for its view of the open sea. Hundreds attended, family, friends, colleagues, even strangers moved by her story. Her parents stood by the water's edge, scattering her ashes into the waves, their faces etched with grief, but also pride. Sarah wanted to show the world how beautiful these creatures are, her father said, his voice breaking. She gave her life for that. Her brother read a poem Sarah had written as a teenager, its lines about the ocean's freedom bringing tears to the crowd. Trainers shared stories of her laughter, her fierce dedication, her ability to light up a room. "She was our sister," Lisa said, her voice trembling, "and she'll always be with us." The memorial was a moment of closure, but it also marked a beginning. Sarah's death became a rallying cry for change, a spark that ignited a movement. Her family established the Sarah Collins Foundation, dedicated to marine conservation and the protection of wild orcas. The foundation partnered with organizations advocating for coastal sanctuaries, vast, netted enclosures where captive orcas could live in natural seawater, with room to swim and dive. The concept, though costly, gained traction, with donors and celebrities lending support. "This is what Sarah would have wanted," her mother said at a fundraiser. "A world where orcas are free to be themselves." Ocean Realm, under pressure from regulators and the public, announced plans to phase out its orca program over the next decade. Tora and the park's other orcas would be moved to a sanctuary, though the details were vague, and activists remained skeptical. Coastal Entertainment settled with Sarah's family out of court. The terms undisclosed, but the company's reputation was irreparably damaged. Other marine parks followed suit, with some ending orca shows outright, citing evolving public sentiment. The industry, once a symbol of family entertainment, was forced to confront its own mortality. Sarah's legacy extended beyond policy changes. Her story inspired a new generation of marine biologists, many of whom cited her as their reason for pursuing conservation. Documentaries and books chronicled her life, portraying her not as a victim but as a pioneer, a woman whose love for orcas had changed the world. Schools in Key West and Miami named scholarships in her honor, supporting students passionate about the ocean. Her childhood home became a pilgrimage site for activists, its front yard adorned with orca-shaped stones painted by local children. For Tora, the future was uncertain. She remained at Ocean Realm, her tank a lonely expanse of blue. Plans for the sanctuary were years away, and her health, like that of many captive orcas, was fragile. Yet, in her quiet moments, she seemed to carry a piece of Sarah flicker of the bond they had shared, now tinged with sorrow. Visitors who saw her through the tank's glass often remarked on her eyes, their depth suggesting a story too complex for words. "She's not just an animal," one guest said, pressing a hand to the glass. "She's a soul, like Sarah was." The story of Sarah Collins and Tora was more than a tragedy, it was a wake-up call. It challenged the world to question the ethics of captivity, to recognize the intelligence and emotional depth of orcas, to imagine a future where they could live as nature intended. Sarah's dream had been to connect with the sea's giants, to show their beauty and grace. In her death, she achieved that dream, her sacrifice a catalyst for change. The ocean, vast and untamed, remained her true home, and in its waves, her spirit lived on, a whisper of hope for Tora and all the orcas, still waiting for freedom. As the sun set over Miami, casting golden light across the sea, The questions lingered. How many more lives would it take to end the cycle of captivity? How many more hearts would break before the world listened? Sarah's story was a call to action, a reminder that change begins with awareness, with voices raised for those who cannot speak. In her memory, the fight continued for Tora, for the ocean, for a world where wild hearts could roam free.